Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategy Informer. And today we are going to interview the developer Drew, who just released his game Journey to the Monolith. Drew, hello, welcome. How are you today?
Hey Arco, I am fantastic, thank you.
I love to hear that. So, tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into it.
Sure. So yeah, my name's Drew. I live in Texas, here in the USA. I guess you can call me like a hobbyist game developer, at least for now. Journey to Monolith is my first commercial game. I've done a couple of smaller game jams here on the side, but this is my first big boy game that I've been really working on part-time for a while now.
Okay, that is good. So let's just start at the beginning. As I said, you just released Journey to the Monolith. It's on Steam. It released August 1st this year, and it is built as a strategy turn-based roguelike game. My first question would be now, why a roguelike? Why go into this ultra competitive market with your, let's say, first commercial game?
Sure, that's a great question. As a solo developer, I feel like roguelite is one of the not easier games to make, but it's the most efficient with your time. You can make one asset and reuse it for multiple runs for the player. It's not like you have to code in one quest that's going to be burned through in 15 minutes and then that's it for the whole game. I also really like roguelike games, just like the endless replayability of them, whether it's action or strategic roguelikes. I like them, and so it makes it easier to make a game that you like playing, at least my experience so far.
Okay, that is obviously always good if you start with a game that you like. But you said you've done some game jam games as well. These game jam games, if you go back to those, were they roguelikes too, or were they completely different genres?
Definitely all different genres. I mean, they were all kind of let's build a game in one weekend sort of game jams, so you can never get your scope has to remain pretty small, right? I think the first one I made was, I don't even remember the order anymore, but there was one, it was kind of like a point and click RTS style, but more of a cozy, casual-ish game where you're taking care of a rabbit while it's injured and trying to make it feel better. And then there was one where you're running around from enemies and there's a sword that's chasing you, and you basically have to run away from the sword and lead it into the enemies to kill the enemies without getting hurt by the enemies or the sword. Kind of like almost like a Vampire Survivors-ish, but a little bit different twist. And there was one that was just kind of like a really, really small adventure platformer. So it was just as I got into game development, just to kind of give me some practice in different genres with different mechanics and get my feet wet.
Okay, what did you kind of, or what did inspire you to get into game development?
Man, I mean, I've always liked playing games, of course. I feel like that's the common answer for most game devs, but I actually first got into web development. I love user interfaces, user experience design, and it's not what I do full time on my 9-to-5 job, but it's kind of like a side gig for me. And I feel like it kind of just naturally fell into, hey, I wonder if I could build a game. Like I said, I like playing strategy games. I like playing roguelike games. And I basically woke up one morning with this idea and just knew I had to build it. And that's what led to Journey to Monolith.
That is very interesting inspiration. I woke up one morning and I know I had to do it. That's actually.
And when I say
cool.
morning, it was like 3:30 in the morning, a.m.
Okay.
And that's not a normal time for me to wake up. It was just like I woke up, I started, for some reason this idea popped in my head and I could not get out of my head. I had to just get out of bed and start sketching ideas or writing notes. The whole project has evolved so many times throughout the years. I've been working on this game for many years. I think it was 27, probably closer to 2018, 2019-ish when I first started. And yeah, it took many years, kind of part-time, off and on. There was a year or two where I took a break and didn't touch it for a while, but yeah, like I said, it's evolved definitely over time.
Yeah. I mean, how long have you been working on it?
Like I said, it's part-time. It's hard to give the exact amount, but I think I started the project in 2019, right before COVID, and now we're in 2024. So what, five years in total.
So, I mean, game deving is not your bread and butter. That's what I hear from it. You're probably doing some main job, let's say it, working full-time, part-time.
Yeah, my main job is in sales. So I guess some of those skills go towards the business side of game development and marketing. Definitely not towards the development side, but it definitely helps having that in my background.
That definitely helps. And then you probably came home and worked like for a few hours on the game, and then you had family time or whatever you
Oh yeah,
did.
there's definitely been times it's very hard to balance between a full-time job. I got my family I want to hang out with. My wife wants to spend time with me. Of course, friends and family. Trying to juggle it all can definitely be a challenge, and sometimes you have to sacrifice time with one thing to be able to get to time with development. And my wife has been super supportive. I have to give a big shout out to her.
That is always good to hear that the spouse is supportive of what you do.
Oh yeah. It was earlier this year. I was chosen to exhibit my game at DreamHack here in Dallas, a big gaming convention that is all around the world. And I had a booth there for the whole DreamHack exhibit in their indie playground. And my wife actually came and helped me run the exhibit, talk to potential players. She plays games here and there, but definitely this is not her genre of game. But she really was a trooper and learned about the game as much as she could to tell it to other people.
Not bad at all. Okay, so let's get into the game a little bit. Because obviously we're here to talk about Journey to Monolith as well. And the first thing is, if you are listening to this, we have the link in the description to the game. So if what you're hearing is your cup of tea, definitely go on Steam and check it out. You will not regret it. It's either wishlisted or maybe even consider buying it to help the dev out. Wishlisting is always a great way. It's free and it helps the dev tremendously, so just do that. And so my first question about the game or to you actually. If you have somebody in front of you, and that should be easy for you because you're in sales. If you have someone in front of you who never heard of your game and you'd have to describe it to them, how would you describe it?
Sure, what's my elevator pitch? I had to practice this one a lot when I was at DreamHack because there would be people at the convention just walking by. They would see something on my booth or see someone else playing the game, and I'd have to walk up and quickly describe the game, at least figure out if it was something they'd be interested in. The way I like to describe it is it's Pokemon meets Slay the Spire. So you have that roguelike progression of Slay the Spire where you're slowly building something up as you go. In this case, it's your team and your fighters, but the combat is really similar to Pokemon, like the video game. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, always have been ever since the first ones came out back in the 90s. And I love the combat system where you have a unit in front, you got some squad in the back, you're switching between them, trying to kind of navigate and strategically put in the right player and take out the enemy team.
Yeah, but here's a thing which I noticed when playing it. Since this is also a bit RNG based, because obviously it's the roguelike. Wouldn't you say that finding like the right trooper to do the job is a bit contrarian to the roguelike genre? Or would you just chalk it up to just lack of the dice, whatever?
So pretty much every option you're given in the game, it's choosing one from 3 different scenarios, right? If you have to select a fighter, you get 3 options and you choose one. If you have to find a spell that upgrades a unit, you get 3 options and you can choose one. Even as like the path that you navigate through the journey, oftentimes there's 3 different selections you can do. Whether it's I want to do a battle, I want to recruit a new fighter, I want to find a new spell to attach to my fighter. You get those 3 options. You can choose the best one that fits your current build or like the current place you are in the run. And so that kind of reduces some of that randomness and RNG, but still keeps things interesting, keeps every run feeling different and unique.
Okay, so you have basically some mitigations there, so it doesn't get into complete and utter chaos.
Yeah, and I think that's important in the roguelike genre. You don't want every run to feel the same. We're always choosing the same thing to build around or the same mechanics to build around. That's to me, that's the joy of the roguelike genre, is every run feels different. And so having that RNG, having that randomness helps make that happen.
Okay. What is the one key feature that you would say makes your game stand out from the crowd?
Good question. To me, the magic really happens is when you're navigating. So in the game, there's 6 different factions. Each faction has 10 or more fighters you can choose from to build up your team as you go. To me, the magic really happens is when you're going from faction to faction, finding kind of a unit from each faction that has some sort of synergy or effect that plays off each other. And there's also different spells you can find in each region. So there's definitely spells in region A, for example, that synergize with a unit from region B, and finding those like small synergies and finding those broken combos that help you get to the end of the run, that's where the magic happens.
Okay, so it's a bit of trial and error, but once you have it down, you can basically win.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some mechanics that just naturally, for example, poison is a status effect you could put on either yourself or an enemy, and there's multiple skills or attacks you can use that either enhance poison damage or cause poison damage, or every unit has its own ability or kind of passive ability, similar to Pokemon, where it's always present or it triggers when something happens. So for example, one example of an ability is when this unit switches in, like becomes the active fighter, it raises the attack of everything on your bench, everything that's in the back line. So things like that, finding those skills and abilities that synergize with each other. Yeah.
Okay, that's very good. So I've found a few things that you mentioned. Obviously, I told you, and I want to be transparent. I played it for 2 hours, and yes, I found two of these synergies that made it pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but made the run more doable.
Yeah.
And I've also felt like that this isn't like the only kind of synergy I could get. How did you go about designing these synergies? I mean, I can imagine that this wasn't an easy task, because if you say there's like numerous of them and there's like multiple variations, how did you approach that? How did you go about designing something like that?
Oh man, definitely loaded question. It evolved so much throughout the years. I have like this massive Excel spreadsheet where I just, every time I think of an idea, whether it's when I'm sitting in front of my computer working on the game, if I'm laying in bed just trying to fall asleep and I think of the idea, I'll put it up on my phone and write the idea real quick. But it's definitely evolved throughout the years. Coming up with synergies and different mechanics, a lot of it just comes from playtesting and playing my own game myself, figuring out what feels fun. There's definitely been times where I've added something and then it became way too overpowered, way too OP, and I had to kind of either scale it back or add in a different mechanic that either counters it or kind of plays off of it and becomes something that the enemy can use. So it's a lot of trial and error, honestly. Yeah.
I mean, it's also something that you probably need to play test a lot, just judging from like the experience that I have with video games.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have someone helping you with the playtesting, or did you do that all on your own?
Most of it I did on my own. I did have like some family members and friends that have played early builds and helped give me some feedback, and I even kind of recorded their play session and just asked them, hey, narrate is everything you're thinking, which is definitely a hard skill to do. I don't know if you've ever tried to stream a game or talk while you're playing a game, it's a completely different experience than just playing it and not talking out loud. But having that recording of someone playing the game, seeing what they struggle with, seeing what they catch on to instantly. I talked about those small like synergies that create broken combos. It's so satisfying to watch someone find that combo and then get excited that they found it and kind of figured it out. There's one synergy in the game. It's around armor. Armor it's kind of like an additional health bar you can add on top of your normal HP, and there's definitely attacks and abilities that give you more armor, but there's also an attack in the game, I believe it's called Shield Bash, where it does more damage depending on how much armor you have. And so I've had multiple people play the game, they find that Shield Bash attack or skill and get really excited because they instantly see the synergy between that and getting a bunch of armor and just doing tons of damage with one attack.
I mean, you also have like that is something that I personally or actually liked, which also comes into play with your builds. You have this level up system between runs. I think he's called Gideon or something. Gideon's store, where you can level your characters up. And you always have to decide, like, he gives you random stats but it's always 2 positives, 1 negative. So you basically have to carefully choose how you want to develop your character. And this goes into what you said, because your armor value is not set in stone. You can basically go to the store and then upgrade your armor for even more bang, essentially.
Right. So every time you win a combat or win a battle, you receive gold, which is like the common reward system or currency system in the game. And that gold you can use to either recruit a new fighter, you can purchase a spell that enhances the existing fighter on your team, or you talked about the Calibero training that you can use to increase the stats of a certain fighter. And yeah, I mentioned like there's 3 different options pretty much with every decision you have to make. It gives you 3 different packages essentially, where you get 2 stats that increase the stat value, and then 1 stat like speed or defense or the energy system that it lowers it. And so you kind of have to find like, hey, I get this option, but it doesn't really work with this fighter on my team. Let me switch it to the other one because that works better. Maybe I have a support unit that's on the back line that doesn't need that attack, but it's giving me more energy and more health so they can stay around on the field longer. So finding and kind of adapting with the options that the game gives you each time is what makes it fun.
Exactly. That is what I also got the impression from, that you can play around a lot and that there's an actual depth to it. What sometimes a lot of roguelikes are actually lacking, because if you start running through them, you quickly notice that it's more like a one-trick pony.
Right.
And with Journey to the Monolith, I had the feeling it's not. But again, I have only an impression, but I think I can gauge games pretty well at this point.
I'm sure you've played many games.
I played too many.
That's been the real challenge, is making sure there's not one mechanic or one skill or spell that's a little bit too good, because it becomes, if it's too good, everyone that plays is going to realize that very quickly and just always navigate to that, or try and farm the shops to try and find that one skill that lets them beat the game. And sometimes that's fun. I mean, you want to feel powerful. It's kind of like you want the player to feel powerful, but not too overpowered where it becomes easy or even boring. And so I mentioned that shield bash attack earlier that does more damage the more armor you have. When I added that attack, it was super fun, but it was also really easy to get a build that made the game too easy. And so I had to, instead of nerfing that attack or nerfing the ability to gain armor, what I did was I added more enemies and more enemy attacks that took advantage basically took advantage of you having armor. There's one enemy in the game that basically, when it comes in, it steals all the armor from the active player's unit. And so it's kind of like a hard counter to that strategy. And so part of the game is, when you first start up a combat, recognizing that, the enemy has a hard counter, let me adjust my play strategy for this combat only and try and overcome that.
Yeah, that's you can do that. That's definitely true. So what kind of interests me is, how did you work on this game completely on your own, or did you have some outside help? Like, I don't know, you hired someone to make your music or the pixel art, or did you really all do everything yourself?
So when I first started the game, it was actually I was trying to make it on the web, so you could just play it from a web browser. It was more just kind of a experiment. I just wanted to get the idea out there. I thought it was a good idea. I wanted people to be able to play it really easily. And at that time, I was just drawing all the art and coming up with it all on my own. And then the more I started to build up the game and flesh it out, the more I kind of ran into limitation or obstacles that I felt like doing it on the web with vanilla JavaScript, it just wasn't cutting it. And so I started experimenting with a couple different game engines. I eventually settled on Godot engine. I like that it's open source, and at the time it was pretty good for 2D games, which I knew my game was going to be 2-dimensional. And so I kind of migrated all my code, everything, to Godot, and I kept, at that time, I had ended up kind of putting it in a different art style. I went from like a fantasy theme to more of a sci-fi theme, and so I spent a lot of time doing some sprites, some sprite animations, some UI, but I was just spending so much time on art, and I'm definitely not a super great artist. And at that point, I kind of took a break from the game. It was just taking a lot of time. Some other things came up, and just took a break from the game. And then I remember I was poking around the internet one time, and there was this game called Duelist. It was kind of a online collectible card game where you play the game on this almost like a chessboard against an online opponent, and you play cards that put pieces on the board. And that game was around for many years, but eventually they shut down shop and released all of their assets open source. And when I saw that they did that, it was like, wait a minute, I love Duelist. What if I created a game in their same universe, take advantage of all the lore and the character design and the cool music, and made a game in their universe, but a different kind of game? And so what I did was I adapted or kind of transferred my game into the Duelist world. Was able to leverage all the art, all the amazing pixel art, all the backgrounds, all the music, a lot of user interface, like pictures and images they had, sound design, and put it into my game. So to answer your question, pretty much everything's me, except for all the art is taken from that open source library from the Duelist game.
Okay.
Yep.
That is not bad, actually. So, and the music is also you? Or did you also use an open source library for that?
It's also from that Duelist open source library.
Okay.
Yeah, as a solo developer, it saved me so much time. I can focus more on the game design, the balance, adding new units and features. I don't have to spend hours and hours drawing a new character, finding sound effects, things like that.
Yeah, that works. Obviously, if you can use it for commercial usage, then all is good.
Yep, all is good there. And as far on the commercial side as well, it can kind of leverage fans of the original Duelist game and say, hey, want to experience the Duelist world just in a different game? Here's Journey to Monolith.
Yeah, that's smart. The salesperson comes through again.
Yeah, that's right.
If you look at the game, and like, I mean, it's not out for very long. It's like 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say Journey to Monolith is a commercial and a creative success?
It depends on who you ask. If you're asking me,
I'm asking you. Obviously, you're the only person in the room.
So to me, this is a hobby project that I decided to release commercially. I came in with, I didn't let my expectations go too high. I was like, hey, if I can make some beer money on the side with this, that's awesome. I don't need this income to survive. So yes, to me, it was a commercial success because people have played and enjoyed the game so far. Just in 10 days, I've made a little extra money from it, but also from the creative side, I've fallen in love with the game development process, game design, especially strategy games. It's so cool to build a strategy game. And so from the creative side, I'd say definitely yes, it's a success. I'm actually working right now on a post-launch update that I plan to release soon-ish. Nothing formally announced yet, but I'm going to add some new spells, maybe a new character or two, some new enemies, and I do plan to kind of keep tweaking and working on the game, at least for a little bit longer, until it seems like no one's playing it anymore, or if I want to move on to something else.
How's the reception been so far in the community? Or I don't know if you have like built a community around the game. I guess you did, but how's the reception?
So far so good. I've definitely had some good comments. The coolest experience to me was exhibiting at DreamHack and seeing people play the game in person and get excited about the game. At that time, it wasn't available for release yet, but people were able to play a kind of a beta build and then also wishlist the game. And I'm actually trying to grow I have a Discord community set up. I don't have a ton of people there talking every day about the game, but I do kind of post little updates there for people that want to follow. And there's a Discord link. I'm definitely on the Steam page. You're welcome to put that link in your video or podcast description as well.
Obviously. We also put, as I said, link to the game wishlist. Mm-hmm. And we put also a link to your Twitter. You have that in the description. So yeah, and I put almost everything in there that you give me.
Okay.
Except OnlyFans. I can't link to OnlyFans, but I don't think you have that. Because YouTube actually cracks down on those things. They say, nah, we don't want that smut here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's always good to see that, like, I mean, obviously you're just one dev. You cannot account for everything. But it's good to hear that overall that the reception was very positive. I would say that's at least what I heard.
Yeah, I was a little bit anxious going into release. Like, what if people play the game and they run into a million bugs that me as a solo developer, I mean, you can't catch everything, right? Probably the biggest thing that I want to work on next is fixing the resolution on different screen sizes and higher quality, like 4K monitors. I've had some people say like, hey, it looks a little blurry on my 4K monitor. And I'm like, I don't have a 4K monitor. There's no way for me to test that, but thank you for telling me and I'll work on it. So there's things like that when you start game dev or work on a game, to me, it's not the fun part of game dev, making sure the game fits on resolutions. Like, I'd rather focus on adding a new cool unit to the game, not fix resolution, but I think it's important for sure.
Yeah, I think you get a little bit of the right mindset there, because as you said, as a solo dev, your resources are kind of limited, if you want to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you should rather focus on making the best game that you can make, instead of optimizing the game too much. Optimization is also pretty important, because if nobody can play the game, nobody will play the game.
Right.
That's just a fact. But if it runs on a 4K monitor or not, I think is I don't think 4K monitors are that much of a standard anyways. So yeah.
That's fair. I appreciate that.
And I think that I mean you are also there and want to make good on it. So that's the other thing. You say, yes, I'm gonna look into that. I see how I can fix the 4K resolutions. And you also said you're preparing a post-launch update anyways. So I guess there were some bugs and some, as you said, other feedback that needs to be addressed.
Actually, not too many bugs yet. Hopefully, as I get more players, they'll help me find some. But most of what I've been working on right now in the post-launch update is just new stuff for the game. Like I said, new spells, new units, new enemies. There's even in the game elite enemies, and the elite enemies have been really fun to design, because I basically pick one mechanic that's in the game, whether it's like poison or armor or there's like a summon. They're called mini jacks in the game. They do damage over time in between turns. And so I pick one of those mechanics and I build an elite enemy around that one mechanic. So for example, the poison one, when that unit starts the battle, it creates these poison spikes on your side of the field. And every time you switch in, a unit becomes poisoned from those spikes. And then of course he has an attack that takes advantage of units being poisoned. And his goal is just to poison everything, deal damage because things are poisoned, and hopefully stall you out of the game so that your units die before he does.
Yeah, but if you have somebody who's highly resistant to poison or even immune to poison, because I think that it's an option too, right?
Yeah, so I mentioned that armor, extra health bar. If you have armor, it kind of blocks the application of poison. So that's definitely a counter to that. And there's even some units that take advantage of being poisoned, whether that's a stat boost or just doing more damage from a certain attack if they're poisoned. Like I said, my first idea, if something feels too good or is hard to deal with, is to create a counter for it, not necessarily to nerf that mechanic. And that's kind of just help flesh out the game and add more variety.
Yeah, exactly. It does sound you put a lot of thought into it.
Sometimes too much thought. I'll be staying up way too late, just staring at the ceiling, coming up with ideas and hoping I don't forget them when I fall asleep. But it's fun. It's fun to think about.
So if you had one thing that you could change about the game, what would that be?
That's a great question. I just want more people to play it, honestly, because I want more feedback. I want to know what people are finding too good or too difficult, so I can think of ways to make the game better. So if I had to change one thing, just get more people to play it, and that's why I'm happy to be on this show with you, Orko, and hopefully spread the word about the game.
Yeah, I hope you get some people to check it out. Let's take a step back. What actually? I know this is kind of a similar question that we already have, but I want to still ask it. Is there what kind of? I mean, you already mentioned Pokemon and Slay the Spire, but are there some other inspirations you drew from for Journey to Monolith?
Definitely. So, like I said, I've been a huge fan of Pokemon, not just the video games, but there's a online simulator for the game that's all about competitive Pokemon playing. It's called Pokemon Showdown.
Hmm?
I've been playing that even before it was Showdown. It was called something like Shoddy Battle, but it's targeted towards people that want to get really into Pokemon battles. But there's a small mode in Pokemon Showdown that's called Random Battles, and this is kind of what triggered the idea for me. The concept of random battles is you're given a full team of Pokemon, 6 Pokemon, and each Pokemon is randomized with different attacks, different the stats are the same from the game, but kind of the way they're built is random each time. And so you can play online against people. You have a random team, they have a random team. Every time you play, it's different. I said, what if I turn that into more of like a single player experience? And so that's kind of what gave me the idea is let me make a single player experience for that random battle method. I love the idea of games where you're not always given something that's super overpowered or works super well together. You kind of have to make with what you got. Any sort of collectible card game draft format like Magic the Gathering, drafting, where you have a pack of cards, you're choosing one from the pack, passing it to the next person, and sometimes you find really cool combos, really broken combos, but then sometimes you're just trying to work with what you got. It's not always great, but you just got to work with it. So adding that kind of challenge into the game was a huge inspiration. Similar to that, I was a big Hearthstone player back in the day. I still dabble on it here and there, but not as much anymore. But they have a similar draft format called Arena, where you're given the option of 3 cards and you choose one, and the other 3 cards you choose one. That was a huge inspiration for a lot of the choose one mechanic in my game. And then of course all the roguelikes. I mentioned Slay the Spire. I mean that's probably the premier roguelike game in the genre, at least for strategy roguelikes. Hades was a cool one. What I like about Hades is you're given something at the beginning of the game, and that's pretty much your weapon that you choose, and then also the first boon from the god power that you get, and what you choose in those early stages kind of defines what you're going to build around for the whole game. And that was a huge inspiration for the general system in my game. In Journey to Monolith, you start with and you choose a general to lead your team, and the general sticks with you the whole game. There's no way to get rid of your general until you lose the run, and every general has a unique ability that kind of makes it easy to build around. I mentioned those mini jacks before that deal damage between turns. So one example of a general is when this switches in, it takes some damage and then summons 5 mini jacks. And obviously, if you're summoning mini jacks every time you switch in, there's ways you can synergize around that. Whether it's let me heal up my unit so it can switch in multiple times, or let me make my mini jacks do more damage each time, and just building up around that.
Okay. Yeah.
I know I just put a bunch of games in on air, but yeah, a lot of roguelike games and card games have been a huge inspiration.
What is your favorite roguelike game of all time?
I'd say Hades. Action roguelikes are really fun. What I like about Hades. What kind of kept me playing a lot was how the story keeps going even after you lose a run. The way they did that was really inspiring. And I haven't had a chance to check out Hades 2 yet. I might wait until it becomes its full release instead of early access, but I definitely want to check that one out too. I've heard it's amazing.
I think Hades is a good choice for that top spot. Could be a lot worse you could choose.
Oh, definitely. There's so many out there. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, definitely. If you like, I want to go a little bit away from Journey to the Monolith, at least for now. I always say it's to Monolith. You have to add a if you look at the gaming industry like as a whole package at the moment,
Sure.
What is some things that you really like?
I like that it's not too difficult for an indie developer or independent developer to release a game and get feedback and get people to play it. Probably the hardest part about releasing a game is just spreading the word, the marketing side of it, telling people about the game, getting people to at least check it out, give it a try. That's probably the hardest part about, I won't say it's the hardest part because building a game is difficult too, but you can spend so much time and effort making a game. It can be a quality game, but if no one knows about it and no one plays it, it might not pick up, so it might not take off. So I like
except
Yeah, go ahead.
except with winning the lottery, e.g., a giant YouTuber talks about it, or
Right.
you have like a giant brand attached to it for some reason, you will not find success. Because I think the indie, or generally the marketplace of games is incredibly crowded.
I know. So many games release every day. It's amazing. I kind of signed up for this one mailing list that tells me each week what games come out, just to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of what kind of games are coming out each week. And sometimes it's overwhelming just how many other games are released every day that I'm essentially either competing with or have to partner with, and kind of try and find my light there.
Yeah, I think another thing that makes it incredible hard is just I mean, that's also obviously a big plus, but it also does obviously heighten the noise. But I feel like, or I think that we're at a point where game making has never been this democratized to some degree, because everyone who is a little bit tech savvy can just pick up an engine and start making a game. Obviously, there's more to it than just, put it that way, than just slapping assets together and calling it a day, because that's not what you should ideally do. No one should do that, actually. There's nothing wrong with like store-bought assets, but at least make something out of it, you know? Don't just slap shit together and call it a day.
Right, it has to fit together. It has to be cohesive and have a cohesive art style. It makes a big improvement. I agree.
You have to work a little bit for it at least. There's not just the things you mentioned, but make it stand out in some way. I don't remember the name, but there's like one game on Steam that plays in space, and it's completely made with store-bought assets, but what makes it stand out is the story, because the story is apparently, at least people say so, really, really good. And if you can do, for example, if you can write a really good story, you will stand out eventually. If you present it right, basically.
Right, yeah, you have to find like, hey, what's my hook? Like, what's going to hook the player into playing this game? And if that's the story, you have to make sure that you present the story really well, market that, hey, here's my hook. The hook is the story, or the hook is this game mechanic that I created, or the hook is my really avant-garde art style that no one's seen before. It's really challenging. It's really challenging to and get that attention. But the platforms like Steam, like itch.io, all the other platforms out there that make it easy to distribute a game that you've made, I think that is really powerful. But also, like you said, it creates a lot of noise, and sometimes it's hard to keep up.
It's also one. I mean, it's a lot of noise. That is one thing, and I think it's also hard to get people. I mean, I do understand why, because it was like the first, and everyone has their library there. A lot of people also just don't go off Steam, and I feel like for a good reason. But there's also, I mean, I'm a big proponent of GOG and itch, for example, because for me personally, a very important part is like DRM free. I'm one of those weird people who want to conserve video games because I think they are art, and I'm not a fan of Steam because obviously Steam is DRM and we need less DRM.
I can get behind that. I actually have my game Journey to Monolith on itch.io, and if you buy the game, it does give you a key to Steam. So if you agree with that, or agree with what Orko's saying, the listeners I'm talking to, you can actually buy the game on itch and support that, get a copy of the game, but also get that key if you want to add it to your Steam library as well.
And I will tell you why you need to get over to itch instead of Steam and get the game there. It's not just DRM free, but itch compared to Steam just takes 10%. So Drew, if you buy his game, would get 90% of the money. Steam takes 30%. So if you buy it on Steam, he only gets 70% of the money. Obviously, that is very important for a dev, and it can make or break some things, you know? I mean, you don't live off the game, obviously, but people should know. I feel like that if they buy it there, they should go over there and rather buy it on itch. And if they get a Steam key, why not? You have it on both platforms then. And one platform is even DRM free, which is good.
Yep, whatever is easier for the player.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That too. But yeah, I'm I'm like a huge proponent of those two platforms because DRM-free first, because I want to go into game development as well. I have some ideas. I want to do it at some point. I just need a good artist because obviously I chose a medium that is very visual to do it. But I will at some point get it off the ground. I know that. But it's like I'm still a consumer first and foremost, and I like my games DRM free. That's just how I like them. And I obviously will also try to get my game. I mean, on itch basically takes everything, so I don't have an issue to get it on there. But I also will try to get it on Steam and on GOG.
Sure.
Yeah. And so let's just go to the polar opposite of what I asked you earlier. If you look at the game industry, what are some really heavy dislikes that you have?
I mean, I'm so new to the game industry. Like I said, I'm more of like a hobbyist developer at this point, so I don't have like an immediately answer to that. I guess on the other hand, as far as what I dislike, that's a good question. My first thought was, well, there's just too many games out there. It's hard to stand out, but I think that's a good thing sometimes for the player. There's just so many choices. I think it's about the player first and the developer second. I know there's a ton of talk about AAA games and monetization. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that I dislike about the games industry right now. I feel like there's just too much focus on monetization, in-app purchases, battle passes. How do I just bleed as much money out of the consumer as I can instead of giving them a quality game for a fair price? And I know it's very expensive to make a good game. Takes a ton of time, takes a ton of resources, so obviously you have to count for that, but sometimes it just feels exploitative, especially in the mobile game market.
The mobile game and free-to-play market are just predatory at this point. And I will stand by what I always say is that there is actually not a lot of redeeming qualities there. So yeah, I'm basically with you. I feel like that the AAA industry needs to scale back. I do think that their games get way too bloated. You just have to look at Ubisoft and their games. They add like a bunch of nonsense into them because everything has to be open world and gigantic. And then you have like a sandbox that is full of nothing and meaningless stuff.
Yeah,
it
just feels empty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just busy work in the end, and it just is for number goes up, and it might feel good at the start, but you get bored pretty quickly. At least I do. The thing is that they need to scale back. I feel like the AAA industry needs to scale back a lot of the stuff. And it's also a self-made issue because they push the player to expect more and more and more and more with their insane hype cycle. And
I agree.
One thing that you mentioned, and I will say it's not a bad thing, that there are too many games out there. It's actually good for the player.
Right.
But I also feel like for a lot of players, it can be very paralyzing because you have so much to choose from that you actually don't know where to start.
Right. How many people have a million games in their library and spend half an hour trying to figure out what game to play and then end up giving up because they just can't pick one? Yeah.
And then they
I've been there myself. Yeah.
And then they just play Counter-Strike anyways.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it can be very paralyzing. I know that feel, but I feel like it already starts when purchasing the games because a lot of people don't like to go outside their comfort zone and just experience new things, so they stick with what they know.
Yeah, and there's something, I mean, a lot of people, including myself, they play games to relax, to immerse themselves in an experience, whether that's story or environment or just the strategy of it, trying to figure things out, puzzle games. And I get it. I mean, there's times I just want to be comfy and play a game I know. I don't feel like learning something new. I just kind of want to immerse myself. And there's definitely room for that, but I get that.
Yeah. So when we go back to Journey to Monolith, you said you want to like work a little bit more on it, but do you have like already a idea for like next game, something you want to do?
Definitely. I have a couple different ideas that have kind of been poking around. I've been poking around the back of my head for a while now, but I made a kind of commitment to myself, or a goal to myself, that I wanted to release my game in 2024, and I did it. It's out there. So now that I've completed that goal, done that, accomplished that, yeah, I definitely have some ideas. One of those is I don't know if I want it to be a roguelike or just an adventure type story game, but it's around having a mech unit, like a robot that you fight in, and every part of the mech is kind of modular, but you find this equipment as you play the game, and you're not always given all the options. So I like that. I like that idea of you don't always have everything you want. You have to make the best with what you do. So kind of building that into more of like an action game or action adventure game with the mechs. That's an idea I have. I have some other ideas about more like educational or games to support kids that haven't quite fleshed out yet. But yeah, I definitely have ideas. I have more projects I want to get to, but sometimes it's just like, how do I find the time?
Yeah, I think that's one problem you're gonna be facing is like, where do I take the time? I worked like 5 years with breaks on Journey to Monolith,
Right.
and it's actually, I mean, it's probably comparatively speaking still a somewhat smaller game to
Yep,
others on the market.
Mhm.
And yeah, but it's still 5 years. So we'll see. I actually hope you'll get the chance to make that mech game, because I like mech games and I will be
I do
there
too.
for it.
Okay, appreciate that. As soon as I have something releasable or to share, I'll share it with you, Orko. I love the aesthetic of mechs, like the idea of kind of building different components and choosing and customizing your mech. So
loaded.
Yeah.
I have a loaded question.
Yeah.
Western or Eastern mechs? Which one are better?
I mean, I grew up on Gundam, so that's a huge inspiration for me. But yeah, that's hard for me to pick one. I think for my game, it would be. I'll be honest, I don't know the true kind of distinction between Eastern and Western style. I'm not that much of a mech nerd, but no offense. But yeah, Gundam's a huge inspiration for me. But I love the idea of more of like a quadruped mech or like a tank type mech that you can kind of customize that way. So maybe you can help me figure out what that fits more into, East or West.
I think that would kind of a little bit more Western style.
Okay.
But if you juxtapose Gundam, since you know that already, and
Right.
Mech Warrior, they are basically the epitome of both styles.
Gotcha.
So Gundam, I would say, is more stylized in the design department, and I mean, obviously, Mech Warrior also has also some kind of flair, some style to it, but it's more functional in the form that they have.
Gotcha. Okay.
At least.
Yeah. I think I would probably lead more towards the functional style, but I do love the stylized from the visual aspect. It's just so cool. I'm a huge anime fan, so having that super stylized look is really important.
Well, did you watch Witch from Mercury?
It sounds familiar.
Gundam, the new Gundam series, Witch from Mercury.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't seen that.
Oh my god, you have to watch it.
I will. I'm gonna go look it up as soon as we get off this call.
Yeah, this is it's one of the better Gundam series they put out in the last few years, and it's also a good introduction to Gundam for noobs. It's Harry Potter meets Gundam. It's actually pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can get behind that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. If you get off, and just let me know what you think of it.
I will. I just pulled it up on I googled it just now, so I'm gonna keep that open and check it out once we stop talking.
That's interesting. I have actually also written an article for the Strategy Informer website of when Armored Core came out, the new one.
Mhm.
I think you probably at least heard of it.
Oh yeah.
6 max games to play when you like Armored Core.
Okay, I will check out that
so
article. Yeah.
strategy games, obviously, but let's pull back a little bit from the mechs because
Sure.
I,
Well, you
I'm
talked
a,
about inspirations earlier
yeah,
about roguelike games. Into the Breach, I think is a really cool game.
yeah, that
Strategy
one,
roguelike game. That's a cool one.
that one is great. I love that one.
Mhm.
There is another one. What was that one? You are also you also fight have mechs and fight like kaijus. I have to look up the name. I forgot the name, but I really like that one too. And it's also a roguelike, and you can also make your mechs modular. Like everything is modular in that. And the gag of the game is basically that the battlefield rolls up behind you. So at one point you have to always move forward, because if you stand in the back, you're going to die.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and
You can't just camp and blow things up with your guns. You have to actually move around.
Yeah,
That.
you have to constantly move forward. You cannot be passive. And that one was pretty great too. I'll see if I find the name and then I'll link it to you too, because I think you might enjoy that too. Let me see.
I mean, part of the game dev process, in my opinion, is just doing research. That's looking at what games are popular, looking at what games are not popular, playing the games, figuring out what's cool about them. So I'm definitely looking for mech games to check out as I start to flesh out my ideas.
Definitely. Yeah, so but there's like a lot of mech games out there, and it's also, I don't think it's nearly as competitive as just going roguelike, but it's also it's more of a niche. So you maybe stand out a little bit more, I feel like, but you also have to be really good, because mech connoisseurs know what they want.
Right. Yeah. So if you can hit those key points of what people want, then most likely someone's going to check out their game, because it's a smaller niche, but you have to do some market research first. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is you need to, I think you need to look mostly at the you need to look mostly on the market and see where you can get into your niche and where to find good stuff for it. So yeah. But yeah, so is there anything you want to tell people about Journey to Monolith before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Pokemon style combat and also roguelikes, where you can kind of build things up as you go and really customize the way each run plays, I think you would enjoy playing my game, and I hope you give it a try.
Okay, if you want to check out Journey to Monolith, we absolutely have the links in the description. Also follow Drew on Twitter, and just in general, stay amazing, everyone. And we'll be back with more interviews and video reviews soon. This has been the Orcosaurus for the TSI. You can check our links in the description. You can go to the website. You can join our Discord server. And you can check out my private YouTube channel where I talk about spicier things than here. So maybe I'll see you there too. In that case, I hope you all have a great night. And I say farewell and bye-bye.
All right. Later, everyone.